Hey guys, what's up? It is week 443, and let's just jump right into the reviews. Oh, first up, this is going to be a little late for you guys, but happy Halloween. They're recording this the Thursday before Halloween. Happy Halloween. I'm going to pop up my 1983 opening for you guys on Halloween. So if you haven't seen that and you're watching this, it'll be the following Tuesday. Check it out. But yeah, let's hop right into the reviews. And this one is from Arrow Video. This is from 1994, directed by Chuck Russell, and this is The Mask, starring actor Jim Carrey. So like many people, including Chuck Russell, well, actually, not Chuck Russell. He says that he was pushing him from In Living Color. But I actually first became aware of Jim Carrey when I was really young on In Living Color. Me and my family would watch the show, the Wayans brothers, David Allen Greer, a lot of great African-American comedians, and of course the token white guy in the show, Fire Marshal Bill, played by Jim Carrey, who was just immensely full of energy, completely insane. In 1994, he had 3 films come out, which isn't crazy. Ace Ventura, Pet Detective, Dumb and Dumber, and The Mask. So the latter, Dumb and Dumber and The Mask, were both New Line. Big hits, so he was basically a star overnight. You know, Jim Carrey I liked a lot as a kid, and as I got older, he just kind of was so weird and odd to me. He kind of rubbed me the wrong way. Maybe it's just in real life I thought he was unhinged, so he kind of just made me uncomfortable. But in certain performances, and I always thought he was a good actor. I never thought he was a poor actor. Just insane. I think in this film, The Mask, which is based on a Dark Horse comic, I think he's perfect for the role. Although it's not exactly like the comic. The comic was a little bit darker according to the special features. I was unfamiliar with The Mask, but Dark Horse Comics in general is, kind of a little edgier comic line. And New Line, it always was trying a lot of crazy, things here. And like I said, I covered Spawn just a couple weeks back, and they did Spawn a couple years later. So New Line was definitely always taking these weird, wild chances. So The Mask follows Jim Carrey, who's Stanley Upkiss, who works at a bank. He's super nice guy. Everybody picks on him. Not picks on him, but walks over him. He has a dog in Milo, a terrier. Isn't a terrier, yeah. And one day, Cameron Diaz, film debut role here, walks into his bank, and he is in awe. She's gorgeous, of course, and he kind of falls head over heels with her. He doesn't know that she's kind of tied to Peter Green, who is a criminal, has a criminal organization. Peter Green, of course, from stuff like Pulp Fiction, Clean Shaven, Bang, Judgment Night. Really good character actor. Was really good at playing creepy, weird, intense kind of characters, of course. But anyways, one day on his way back home, they're kind of staking this bank out to rob it, of course, and Jim Carrey is oblivious. One day, after kind of just having a rough day, he ends up spotting what he thinks is a person kind of drowning in the river. So he jumps in and he finds this kind of strange little mask that basically turns him into the Nutty Professor style character. It amplifies everything, kind of I guess he's a love-struck kind of goofy guy, obsessed with cartoons. So that's what he becomes, this live-action kind of wild, love kind of crazy cartoon man. Doing a lot of the Tex Avery kind of gags that we've seen, like the heart thumping, the ooga eye popping, and of course the wolf howling kind of stuff all pops up in here. And he becomes this weird kind of superhero and ends up, saving Cameron Diaz, saving the day, all that kind of stuff like that. The thing about The Mask, watching it this time around, is I realized how weird it is. The tonal and everything. In '94, I was 8 years old. I think we all enjoyed it. We all liked it. The tone of The Mask is a bizarre one. It's part musical, very comedy oriented. Of course, it's a comedy musical, but it's also got like a little bit of darker, creepier edges to it. And I don't know where to put this in terms of, like, it reminds me of so many more movies, but it stands on its own as its own thing. Like, it feels kind of like Darkman at times. It feels like, Dick Tracy. And it feels like Spawn even. But it also has this goofy kind of element, like Beetlejuice too. Like, comedic element. But even sillier, more lighthearted. I don't know where The Mask really fits in anywhere. It's kind of its own entity as this kind of weird superhero film is concerned. But rewatching it, it held up. The colors popped really well. The acting was really solid, especially a lot of the side characters like his buddy or the cop Peter Rygard. He's absolutely hilarious, and it's funny, in all the movies you watch, the cops never do their job, and this cop does his job, and he's basically punished for it. He's like not too over the top. Also, Peter Green, like I mentioned. The goons in here are fun. One of the goons is actually the guy from People Under the Stairs. He's the white criminal with Ving Rhames. He's also in Running Time with Bruce Campbell. He's also in, geez, I'm forgetting one of the big ones. But he's an actor that pops up in a lot of these. He's got nice little small role in here. Dennis Forrest, if I remember his name's correct. He's one of the bad guys from Cliffhanger. He's a goon in here. And a Bobo from Double Dragon Under Siege 2 pops up in here as a bad guy. So a lot of familiar faces as goons. It was one of the things I always remembered, and I always thought they did a good job kind of casting in the background of smaller characters. Also, the replacement warden for Tim McManus from Oz is one of the bad guys as well. So it's got a nice little cast. If you look at the runtime, you think, man, this thing is a little too long, 101 minutes, but it flies by pretty quick. I think Carrey was made for this role, and I think he really makes this role his own. And, a lot of times you watch the Jim Carrey movies like Ace Ventura, and you're like, why is this weirdo? And everybody's like playing it straight except Ventura. So it's just a weird kind of thing, and that works to a certain extent. But when you have a reason for Jim Carrey to go completely crazy, and when he puts this mask on in the style of like a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, or Nutty Professor style thing, it works perfect, right? He puts the mask on and he becomes this wild, crazy man, and you get full on Jim Carrey, what he's best at, being completely insane. And there's a justified reason for him being completely crazy in that. So I think he was cast really well in here, and I think he handles it really well, playing the kind of dual character personalities, the nice guy and the crazy guy, all together. The special effects were really state of the art for the time. IBL, was it IBL? IBL, I think, or something. They do the effects for so many companies. I've heard so many kind of interesting things, like they were doing the water on the Poseidon, the remake of the Poseidon. So they do a lot of good stuff, and they're really kind of cutting edge at the time. And the CGI, of course, the digital effects, all that stuff, it's dated. Of course it's dated, right? So, but I still think it holds up decent enough, and at the time it was spectacular. So that's the one thing about a lot of these effects. The musical numbers are perfect. They're funny. They're choreographed well. And Edge City. This takes place in a place called Edge City. It's not like the real world. Edge City is its own real world. It's its own world. It also reminds me of Cool World, this movie. And Who Framed Roger Rabbit, all sorts of things like that. So Edge City does not take place in the reality that the normal world happens. People don't react as much as they should to these kind of ridiculous things that are happening. So you kind of have to assume that ridiculous things happen a lot more often in this world than in the normal timeline of this world. I think the best joke in here, which I thought was absolutely insane, I completely forgot about it, was when they break the fourth wall and they're at the Oscars all of a sudden, and Peter Green's reaction is absolutely hilarious, and Chuck Russell does mention that in the special features. There's tons of features on here. I think Chuck Russell was a good and interesting choice because his first film for New Line and his first directed film was A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3, The Dream Warriors, which is tons of special effects. He'd go on to do The Blob 88, tons of special effects. He would do Eraser later on. And he did the Witchboard kind of remake, reboot thing, which I'm not a big fan of. I was kind of really disappointed, but I think it's less have to do with Chuck Russell and more so just the script and basically just the kind of world we live in, with those kind of movies like that. Just, more low budget, more just not made for me. It's just something that's not 100% for me. But, The Mask, I think it held up really well, and I enjoyed every second of it. It's a movie that I watched dozens of times as a kid, but it was something that I had not revisited in probably 20 years, maybe even longer. But let's dive into the features here. We have two commentaries. We have the archival commentary with Chuck Russell, of course, and the archival with Chuck Russell, New Line chairman Bob Cheh, screenwriter Mike Werb, executive producer Mike Richardson, producer Bob Engelman, ILM, VFX supervisor Scott Squires, and animation supervisor Tom Bertino, and cinematographer John R. Leonetti. So we have the man behind the mask, a newly filmed interview with Chuck Russell. Very candid, and he talks a little bit about how this got to production. He wanted to make this, and they wanted to make it more of a horror film and all that kind of stuff like that. And I really think he was a good driving force on how this movie turned out. From strip to scream, a newly filmed interview with Mike Richardson, Mike Werb, and Mark Verheiden. And I think they were involved with like the screenwriting and the original comic and all that kind of stuff, and the changes and all that stuff. Pretty interesting. Green Faces, Blue Screens, a newly filmed interview with visual effects supervisor Scott Squires. Also talks a little bit about all, the kind of crazy effects at the time and how different they were and how they could basically not always use effects when they didn't have to. Splicing, a newly filmed interview with editor Arthur Coburn. Ask Peggy, a newly filmed interview with actor Amy Yazbek. She's pretty good in this, pretty funny, good character, and she has kind of a thing that you don't expect her to do, which I thought was pretty enjoyable. Where are we at? Towing the Conga Line, a newly filmed interview with choreographer Jeremy Evans featuring new, never-before-seen rehearsal footage with Jim Carrey, which is fun. Yeah, he talks about getting the actors there and how Cameron Diaz and Jim Carrey are pretty good dancers, except they couldn't use them for certain things, obviously. And then we have Terrier Mania, a newly filmed essay by critic Elizabeth Purcell on canine sidekicks Milo, and they talk about, when terriers were everywhere, including Wishbone, Frasier, all that kind of stuff like that. Archival featurettes return to Edge City, introducing Cameron Diaz, Cartoon Logic, What Makes Fidel Run, the making of on-set interview bites, and Kaskin director and B-roll footage. Deleted scenes includes an opening that was cut and a death scene that was cut, with optional commentary by the director, theatrical trailer, image gallery, reversible sleeve featuring 2 original artwork options, illustrated collector's booklet featuring new writings on the film by Alexandra Heller-Nichols, and original production notes, double-sided fold-out poster featuring 2 original artwork options, 6 postcard-sized reproduction art cards. It was nice revisiting this one. It had been a long time, and The Mask held up more than I thought it would. And like I said, I'm not the biggest Jim Carrey fan, but I think he's a good actor, and I think sometimes he does a really good job, and I think this is one of them for The Mask. And I think he does a great job in it. Good stuff. Oh, duh. It looks great in 4K. The color, and it sounds great too. Dolby Atmos in here, and the sound popped big. I meant the visuals popped. I was like, oh man, this movie's so colorful. Even the stuff like the alleyway shots and stuff were really well done. So just typical run-of-the-mill shots had a lot of beauty to them. So great stuff. The Mask. Okay, the next one here is from 88 Films. It is a 4K, and it is SX Experiment Love Camp. One of the many Nazi exploitations that came out from Italy in the late 70s, after the success of stuff like Night Porter and Sallow and probably The Damned, and Ceylon Kitty, and of course Ilsa, She-Wolf of the SS from 1975. That's the American picture here. But this was kind of a weird little subgenre of Italian cinema. There wasn't many of them, but they all have very similar titles like SS, Experiment Love Camp, SS. I always Women's Camp. I honestly, when I was getting ready to watch this one, I was like, now, have I watched this one years ago? I do not remember. I think the most nasty one that I recall is probably The Beast in Heat. I know 88 Films put out one earlier. One of their first U.S. releases was a Nazi exploitation movie. Now, not all these made the video nasties list, and the commentary does go over the reasons why they think it is, and I probably think they're correct on this one. So this is kind of fairly standard here. Is by director Sergio Garrone, who did a couple, gothic horror films that I think people might be familiar with by Klaus Kinski. Full Moon put those out, Hand That Feeds Death and Lover of the Monster. I've covered Hand That Feeds Death here. He also did Django the Bastard, which has Anthony Stephan in it, which is a weird kind of Western, surreal, almost horror kind of thing, which is pretty decent. Synapse put that one out. So Sergio Garrone did also a couple Nazi exploitation movies like the classic directors like Bruno Mattei and stuff like that. So this one here, in the 4K, it looks fantastic. I was shocked this was in 4K. Looks and sounds great. You can watch it in Italian or English, which is nice, which is cool. So right when it opened up, the first act of this one, I was like, oh man, this is actually a lot more disturbing than I remembered these kind of movies being. Sometimes they cross that line of just being stupid. I was like, I don't know if I've actually seen this one. But has a familiar face in here. To me, is kind of like the sergeant. He plays kind of the villainous sergeant, who's a typical character type in these. He's in stuff like Escape from Hell, the 1980 Women in Prison movie, where he plays a kind of a similar sleazebag that he does in this one. So right in the opening of this one, it just has basically Jewish women being killed in this torturous way and put into, the oven. And I was like, oh. And it just felt really off, it didn't, it felt a little bit more real than I expected and stuff like that, as these movies should probably be disturbing. But after, the opening, we get to, kind of the cheese-tastic stuff, which what they're doing is they're doing these love experiments, and they're taking these 6 kind of studly German soldiers, and they're going to basically make these Jewish women be their, love slave prostitutes. So they're going to have them all sleep together and whatnot, while the commanding officer has blackmailed these 2 scientists or doctors into helping him. One of them is a Jew, and one of them we don't really know, but she's got dead eyes, so maybe she did something horrible. I don't know. How much horrible things could she do than the Nazis? Probably not many. But so it gets to the point where there's the guys are having sex with the women on the regular, tons of nudity, tons of fairly gratuitous sex, and of course there's a love story that blossoms, which is fairly common in these movies. The commanding officer seems to be impotent, so he has his eyes set on one of these soldiers to where he wants to switch genitalia so he can you get in there and do the same, you do what he has to do for his country and have lots and lots of sex. So that's kind of the plot here, where we have this kind of mixed kind of love story. We have these kind of elaborate Nazi parties where they're getting drunk and molesting and raping all the women and whatnot, and we have some bonding with the women. We have the classic torture scenes, too hot, too cold. It's absolutely hilarious in here when they have this woman in this hot tank. I'm not saying her being tortured is funny, but there's just this nozzle that turns, and it's literally just like a piece of cardboard. It looks so fucking bad that they painted on the hot and cold. It looks horrible, which actually made me laugh out loud quite a bit. The movie as itself is pretty standard kind of Italian Nazi exploitation stuff. It's not as good as something like The Beast in Heat, or as disturbing, to be honest, or of course Ilsa, or any of the other kind of classic, Nazi exploitation movies that were inspired. And I wouldn't call the other ones, like the classic ones, Nazi exploitation. I'd say there's something else more in line with like an art film, even if they are shocking. But these ones, like the wacky ones, I can't think, like, there's so many sets. I had all these sets and I watched a handful of these, and they all have like Women's Hell, SS Experiment Camp, Love Camp 7, which is actually an American picture, but from '69, which is an early one of the early movies that made the video nasty list. So don't have too much to say about the movie, except I was really impressed with the actual like look of it. The 4K looked fantastic. The action at the end's pretty good too. Of course, it kind of blows up into this crazy action, kind of tragic stuff here. There is some features on here which are definitely welcomed. We have it in English and Italian, of course, and subtitles. Audio commentary by Italian cinema experts Eugenio Ercolani and Nadi Colbretti, and they talk about previous Nazi exploitation movies and all that kind of stuff, and the actors and whatnot in here. And then a really good interview here, Sadistically Yours, Sergio G, which is roughly 30 minutes with the director who died in 2023. So he talks about his career, and there's a really kind of sad thing at the very end when he says, man, your brain cells are just turning off like graveyard lights at the end. It sucks getting old. And I've heard that from many old people saying that kind of stuff towards the end of their life. But that was a good interview with him, and he talks about doing many different things with his life and these movies not really getting the money that he needed to make them and whatnot, and just being put into the position to make this film, and what's wrong with the film industry and why the Italian film industry died. Interesting stuff. We also have a sadist sound, an interview with music historian Pier Pablo De Santis, the Albizo Dynasty, an interview with editor Eugenio Albizo, Albazo, framing exploitation interview with cinematographer Maurizio Sentini, and Italian opening and closing titles, original trailer, reversible sleeve featuring uncensored new art by Joel Robinson in the original Italian poster. So I can't believe this is on 4K. If you're looking for a sleazy, nasty, kind of mean-spirited movie with a tragic ending and some typical Nazi exploitation stuff, then SS Experiment Love Camp is definitely for you. I'm sure it has numerous titles. I wonder if they're going to do the other Garrone Nazi film as well. But yeah, I think this cover is kind of cool. I don't know. Some of the newer covers I'm a little iffy on. I think it's overall, I like the actual like slip cover. I think is really nice. And the back here I think is actually really cool if I can kind of show it. That's the cover art I remember the most from this one here. But yeah, good, nice release of a wild movie that I don't know if I can wholeheartedly recommend. The Nazi exploitation genre ain't for everybody. Okay, moving on to the second disc of the Fantastic Warriors from the Furious Swords and Fantastic Warriors, the Heroic Cinema of Chang Cheh set. Here, 10 movies, and we're on the second disc of, the second box set. Within here, the second set here, and this is The Trail of the Broken Sword, and this stars legendary Hong Kong actor Jimmy Wang Yu, 1967. Right before or right after he did the one-armed, Swordsman, which was kind of his big hit, and then of course he would have that big breakaway from Shaw Brothers and go on and make his own movies like I think he was a Chinese boxer and stuff like that, and the one he made in Australia, all that kind of stuff like that. So Jimmy Wang Yu was one of the guys that early worked for Chang Cheh. He got his career working there and stuff like that. So he's got a unique look about him, especially when he's younger. He's known as a tough guy guy, but he definitely never looks like a tough guy when he's super young here. So essentially what happens is this guy, in the very beginning, his father was murdered, so he wants to get revenge. He goes in and he kills this kind of noble guy, this nobleman who has, status in the community, and he flees from it, of course, and he kind of goes in disguise as a stableman, and he has to hide that he's a really good fighter and he's a great swordsman and all that kind of stuff. He has to kind of eat crow and everything and just kind of be quiet and everything like that. But the woman he loved, who loves him, sends out who would be another suitor for this guy, who's absolutely in love with Jimmy Wang Yu's ex, or the woman that he loves is in love with her and wants to marry her, but he is being loyal to her. He wants to go out and find Jimmy Wang Yu and bring them back and reunite them. So he basically goes across, and finds, looking for him and everything like that, while a group of bad guys are after him. They're kind of like I don't remember their actual name, but they're like kind of isolated on this island. There's a big group of them, and they're all kind of weird, bizarre kind of characters and everything like that. So eventually it's them kind of hunting him and him looking for him. And of course they meet up, and he unknowingly befriends Jimmy Wang Yu. And he thinks he's just kind of a stable guy, working with the horses and all that kind of stuff, and a helpful hand. But is he a stable man? He's basically just working the store and everything like that, the shop. But of course when this guy's put in danger, Jimmy Wang Yu stands up and reveals himself and whatnot. And this kind of complicates everything. But Jimmy Wang Yu is going to take it in his hands to, free this guy from his curse and do the noble thing, because he knows that the woman he loves can never have a normal life. So that's kind of the deal here, the tragic, heroic kind of story that you would expect from a Chang Cheh movie, with plenty of violence, especially for 67. It's pretty violent. There's a nice kind of fight when he first reveals himself in a bar with like 5 guys, which is really cool. The really gaunt, skinny guy is kind of like one of the main henchmen here, and he, I think he's just the main bad guy's son, and the main bad guy really kind of keeps into the back until the very ending. But he's this incredibly skinny guy who's in a couple of these movies early, and he has this evil kind of look about him. I think he's really well cast, of course. And the end fight scene is great as well. There's a couple baddies that pop up in the very end that you really don't expect, and it ends just kind of tragically and weird and almost fantasy-like overall. But yeah, I think that there is a commentary on here, and I want to say that I think that Mike Leader and Arnie Venema do the commentary on this one. It's always I think so. No, David West does the commentary on this one. My bad. Good commentary, talking about of course Jimmy Wang Yu's career and stuff like that, and just a little bit about the movie in general. I thought the Trail of the Broken Sword was decent. It's not my favorite in the set, but it's a good one. It's not horrible, and I think the ending makes up for a lot of it. But a lot of these movies are very kind of similar, and especially in that vein, but it's nice to see an early Jimmy Wang Yu movie. Okay, the next one here is The Wandering Swordsman, made in 1970, starring David Chang, another actor who kind of got his start in the Chang Cheh universe here. A lot of the Shaw Brother guys did, including like Tai Lung and whatnot. So David Chang has more of like, I think, like a younger kind of look than Jimmy Wang Yu, a softer kind of look about him, and he's been in a bunch of his movies. Now, The Wandering Swordsman, of course, is your classic kind of story, right? It's kind of like a wuxia, kind of special warrior kind of fighting guy. But the one thing I took away that made The Wandering Swordsman a little bit different from a lot of the other Shaw Brother movies here is, that usually Wandering Swordsman is either a quiet, kind of tough one. He's kind of a little playful and goofy, but he's also incredibly naive and silly. And so basically he's a Robin Hood type character, steal from the rich, give to the poor. Well, he steals from the guys who are stealing and gives to the poor people and whatnot. So he always wants to be helpful and spread the money around, which is kind of a noble thing a lot of these heroes will do in the Shaw Brother films. They always want to like take the money or spread the riches and everything like that to the people. And a lot of these movies have always like historical back into them, where like they're all trying to overthrow like the corrupt governments and things like that, and the dynasties and all that kind of shit like that. So what we have is David Chang here. And he ends up getting involved with this group of assassins, these bad guys, and he runs into them on all different separate occasions. A couple of the bad guys he ends up kind of robbing from and giving to these poor people, and then one guy ends up buying his swords from him, and all these kind of things like that. And David Chang throughout makes a lot of silly mistakes. They kind of set him up as being kind of an oaf, where like he gives all his money away and can't afford money, so he has to sell his swords and things like that. And he actually befriends this young woman, and it's almost kind of like a love story. And in the very beginning, they give some foreshadowings, like promise never to cry again, all that kind of stuff there, because he saves her from the villainous people and whatnot. But he ends up getting tricked, and he ends up kind of looking bad in a certain way and has to redeem himself against this group of villains that are established throughout the film, where he has run-ins with. And the villains are actually probably some of the stronger points here. Like, the hero's only as good as the villains, as a lot of these experts will say, or the films basically portray, right? So you got like 5 or 6, these 6 villains that are all great, and the main guy is Failsafe, who sets up all the plans and traps. And I've seen this guy in numerous Hong Kong films, even even some of the horror films, and even I think some Taiwan horror films and whatnot, where he plays kind of like this mean heavy. He's just kind of got a good presence, screen presence about him. But the main showdown here is classic Chang Cheh, fight until you die, get stabbed in the stomach and don't go down, all that kind of stuff like that. Disemboweled but still going strong. Classic David Chang too, and I think David Chang's really strong in this one. I actually prefer this one, The Wandering Swordsman, over the Trail of the Broken Sword. And comparing the two, I think that it's just got better bad guys, and I think I can't believe I'm going to say this, but I think I prefer David Chang over Jimmy Wang Yu in his early films. You know what I mean? Not all of them, just I think in these two films comparing in particular, I think I prefer his character more. This one has the commentary by Michael. I would double check now, second guessing myself. I'm always mixing these up. I listen to all the commentaries too. Yeah, this one has Mike Leader and Arnie Venema in here. And they definitely do mention the ending being a little dragged on too much. Maybe they should have ended it a little bit sooner, maybe a little kind of confusing, padding out the stuff. But yeah, next week we'll come out and we'll finish this set here with the last two films in here. I've been enjoying the Chang Cheh movies, and I think he's probably the Hong Kong director out of anybody that I've seen the most films by. I've probably seen 20, 25 of his films in just the last few years. So that's kind of cool. And the last one's a trilogy of Swordsman and the new Shaolin Boxers. A lot of Shaolin movies throughout. But yeah, nice set so far. Okay, we're going to finish up the Tim Ritter box set here, and the last one is Reconciled Through Christ, and this is from 2004. This is after he had already moved to Kentucky, and this is an oddball one because, you know, Tim Ritter had made a lot of horror films, a lot of slasher films, a lot of gory films or button-pushing films, a lot of sex, all that kind of stuff like that, about movies about, you know, unfaithful spouses early on from his younger ages all the way until relatively close to this point. So, you know, this is an odd one, and I know that, you know, a lot of indie directors have their points of religion and things like that, but this is what, 21 years ago. I'm not sure how it feels on how he feels about this kind of movie now. It's interesting. He does do a like interview, I think, on here, but I don't know if that one's not relatively new or old. But there's an old commentary, and he kind of explains himself and goes through here and everything like that, talking about it. So Reconciled Through Christ, definitely not something on paper that I would normally watch, but being a fan of Tim Ritter, I have seen this film before, so rewatching it, I was kind of wondering how it would hold up. And there's CGI in here that at the time for a low budget movie might be acceptable. Now it's of course very, very dated, and I've never been a huge fan of CGI. Some of the like you know, people turning into insects and like the dragon and stuff like that, stuff that is beyond Tim Ritter's budget on his films. But this is a relatively low budget film, and it's kind of a two-hander. It's got two main people in the film, and it's basically about a brother who is really concerned about his other brother, kind of eternal soul. He doesn't want him to be damned to hell if he doesn't accept Jesus Christ as his Lord and Savior, so he's visiting him in the hospital and reading him prayer and all that thing like that. And basically what we have here is we see a little bit of the brother's story. I don't want to spoil everything, but he is calling his wife and trying to get back with her. I believe it's Tim Ritter's wife in this film. Or at the time, very least, and he's calling her, and she will not talk to him. Eventually, you know, he's cheated on her. He drinks. He won't. He's not a religious guy, and he's just an angry, overall bad person everywhere. So he realizes she must be at her mother's, and he's going to make like a long trip, a 10-hour drive to the mother's. And on the way, he picks up this hitchhiker who's actually in Twisted Illusions Part 2 as the kind of stalker tape guy. Tapes. He's really funny in that. And this guy appears to be some sort of, you know, angelic kind of character, and he kills him numerous times, and they're always having these, you know, theology and religious kind of discussions throughout the entire time, and he kills him a bunch of times, but he keeps coming back, and all that kind of stuff like that. I think the lead performance in here is pretty good. I think the guy does a good job, especially on a low-budget movie here, and I think the other guy does pretty good as well from the Twisted Illusions too. Not as strong, but his lines and dialogue and stuff like that, the preaching and stuff is probably a little bit harder to deliver, but I think both the lead performances are pretty solid in the low-budget movie, especially, you know, for these kind of no-budget films. You know, a lot of people could turn this off right away. It does have kind of a horror bend to it, more so than a lot of the other religious kind of films. And to be honest, you know, if you pop in a lot of those Christian religious films, even ones with bigger budgets, they are really hokey and not very well made. And this one is just as well made as those ones, and it's about 1% of the budget, so you got to cut him some slack on that right there. This does have a commentary on there with Ritter talking about why he decided to make this film and his history and all that kind of stuff like that. Talking about making it, all of those things like that. And it has a bunch of other things on here too that I definitely do not want to mix, because this is also bonus material on here, and I don't want to forget it, so I'm going to read off the back a little bit. New stills, making of virtual FX, behind the scenes director Richard Anaskai's second unit. But then we have new bonus roundabout materials here. This is also an upscaled transfer here. Tim Ritter's never before seen two Super 8 films from 1979 with director's commentary. This is like Panther something, and they're just weird and cheap. And Conan, they're super low budget. I mean, they're not even budgeted. They're kids in the backyard with a Super 8 fucking around. Really cool to see. Hear his commentary too. He makes jokes about it. It's pretty funny. And then new bonus, uncut 2019 Savage Master rock video directed by Tim Ritter. Music video stuff here. New Savage photo gallery. New Santa Kill short. Tim Ritter's 2019 Santa slasher short for Richard Mogg and Wave Video uncut edition. But there's also some other bonus stuff on here that they don't mention, where we kind of just sit down with interviews with Tim Ritter where he talks about, VHS in general and his passion for all that stuff. There's two different interviews on here. There's an interview with the actress as well, but that stuff's really good with Ritter because you just see him talk so much about his passions and his love and the VHS craze, and it's really good stuff. And you could tell that Tim Ritter is 110% a horror fan before anything else, a movie fan before anything else, and he's 100% diehard into it. Talks about the obscure movies and the underground tape trade, all that stuff like that anybody that's probably a little bit older than me for the most part knows about. And I know a little bit about it. I was getting into, right when I got into, I've been collecting since I was 10 or so. So it's been damn near 30 years. I do remember kind of getting bootleg tapes of Cannibal Holocaust and Necromantic and stuff like that. But, it was a little bit different. I was just that stuff was sort of phasing out with the internet coming in. You have to order direct from Tempe and things like that of that nature. But yeah, it was a crazy world. And I definitely remember some of the video store world, but he's got, a few years on me. So he's a little bit more involved in that stuff. But it's always interesting to hear people talk about that stuff for the most part, especially when they, lived it and made films about it and stuff like that. Just a passionate guy. Very passionate about films, and hearing all these commentaries and his interviews and stuff like that, he's come around. You hear early commentaries where he seems almost, I don't want to say bitter, but really discouraged, and then he's like, I'm still just going to make the movies, you got to do this for the love of movies and stuff, and it's very understandable. But Tim Ritter is one of the real ones there, and this set's interesting stuff. If you're a big Tim Ritter fan, I'd say you pick this up along with the Truth or Dare set, and make sure you pick up Day of the Reaper and Killing Spree as well. Killing Spree's from TerrorVision. You gotta have Killing Spree. You gotta have that one. Those ones are not in the sets and everything along those lines. I haven't viewed any of his real new stuff like Sharks of Corn. Just not really my thing. I'm not really big into indie new movies. It's just, the different styles of filmmaking has changed so much, and maybe I become the bitter one for sure. But anyways, the Tim Ritter SOV collection. Yeah, there we go. Okay, this one from Dread Central is a new film, but it was originally made in 2023, and I think this reloaded version is kind of like new opening, new ending kind of stuff like that. And this is Diced Reloaded from Dread Central. I'd not heard too much about this, but I thought it was a pretty good Halloween kind of watch here, Halloween slasher stuff. So I was right around the season, so I popped it in. Dread Central, mixed stuff here. Sometimes they release some cool stuff. They did originally release Terrifier, so that. And this movie, right when I popped it in the opening, it's gory and pretty intense. It reminded me, of course, Rob Zombie's kind of Halloween and Terrifier, which most movies or horror films, especially slashers, are going to live from certain things, and I don't necessarily blame them, although at times I did feel like it did feel a little too much like Terrifier, but it is what it is. A very popular horror film, and if we were holding the movies from the 80s to the same standards, right? We love movies that people do in the 80s and stuff that are basically ripoffs too. And I don't even say ripoff as a negative thing, but what we have here is your kind of big, scary kind of type guy, silent for the most part. He has this weird kind of, he's in this mental institution, and the doctor comes in. He rips the doctor to fucking pieces in gory detail. I think Joe Castro did the special effects. Great practical effects in here, especially on a budget. Good stuff. He does really good stuff for the most part, honestly. And he did good stuff on the Mutilator kind of sequel. Not a great movie, but good practical effects, of course. So what happens is he escapes, and he ends up going back to kind of his hometown in the style of Michael Myers. He ends up focusing on this girl that he is related to, kind of like Michael Myers, and in like a coffee shop, kind of like Terrifier. So it's like you kind of get the gist of it. There's only so many things you can do with a slasher movie in general, especially when it takes place in Halloween. And he starts to pick off people surrounding this girl and everything like that. Some of them are pretty good gory deaths. A couple of them are not great. And here's what it is. The practical stuff is great, but they just want to add like CGI spray at times. It's not even spray. It's just like kind kind of like sprinkled stuff in it. It's very obviously CGI, like spray. It doesn't look good. It looks like crap to me, and it's probably just because they can't make a mess in certain areas. I don't know, but the practical stuff stood alone fine. I don't know why they had to add those. Even people are like, there's no blood. It's like, just a little, I don't care. It looks better that way than what they did. But you know, for the most part, this is okay. I don't love it. I don't think it's amazing. I think it has a decent Halloween atmosphere. I think it's shot pretty well, especially for a low budget. I was impressed with the cinematography, and I know people are like, well, they got better cameras, but they do a pretty good job. They do different angles. They do like the kind of pan over, hiding behind things, and they do good with depth of field, things in the foreground, things in the background, to make it a little bit more interesting than your typical no budget horror film. The killer's design is cool. He steals a Halloween outfit, makes his face kind of like this weird kind of, I think he's supposed to be a scarecrow kind of deal, so he looks pretty decent. The killer's big, he's scary, it's gory, it's okay. If you're looking to kill some time with the you know, around Halloween and kind of shut your brain off, then pop in Diced Reloaded, you could do probably worse. So there's also Dice short film and Dread trailers on here. The Dice short film, I think, to my understanding, is people were saying that I didn't watch it because the sole reason everybody said it was just essentially this movie without the opening, and they kind of just added a new opening and made it like kind of a feature-length film for this release. So that's Dice Reloaded. Okay, next up is one from 2024, but it got its wide release 2025, and this is from the horror section. This is a sub-label of Vinegar Syndrome, and this is Jimmy and Stiggs, directed by Joe Begos, of course, who did Bliss, VFW, Mind's Eye, Christmas Bloody Christmas. Is that what that one's called? But Joe Begos is really good director, low-budget horror director, makes crazy splatter wild movies. Never really made anything I absolutely hated, and he's made Bliss and VFW, two movies I absolutely love. So Jimmy and Stiggs was one that I definitely was looking forward to for my possible top 10 of 2025, and hey, it's most likely going to be there. So he made this over a few years. He made this in his apartment. He shot this on film. He shot all the special effects. He stars in it. He edited it. Joe Begos did absolutely everything in here. He used the actor Matt Mercer as well in here, and they're pretty much the two leading driving forces on this movie. Jim Koontz, I think, is the cameraman on here, but I don't want to say he shot it, but he's behind the camera a lot, even though the way he explains it's pretty wild. But anyways, Joe Begos is a one-man wrecking crew making this damn thing, and listening to him talk about it, he's a very passionate guy, and hearing him, I'm like, man, it takes a lot of dedication to make a great horror film, but you don't always need all the money in the world. You just need to take a chance and be fucking hardworking and know what you're doing, and he exactly does do that. Being shot on film helps a lot. There's a lot of bright colors. He talks about shooting the direct outside, being able to stand in and have the windows open, because he said film looks so much better in that aspect. And you're like, you're right. That's why in a lot of new movies they don't ever show the windows open. And I'm like, you fucking never thought of that. But there's just something about film. And I know I sound old and crummy and whatnot, but that's just the thing. I think movies look better shot on film. It's just maybe the way I was raised or whatever, watching movies like that. But it's 100% fucking true to me. So yeah, it's kind of a simple story. Jimmy is just living in his apartment. He's drinking, he's doing coke, he's smoking weed, he's doing all these things. He's a filmmaker, he's struggling, he's bitter, he's mad, he's angry. And one night he's kind of abducted by some aliens. They come into his house to fuck with him, and his buddy comes over. He calls his buddy. His friend does not believe him, but of course he's going to get involved too, and these aliens come back, and he starts killing them in brutal fashion. They're the classic kind of grays, although mostly they look blue because all the crazy lighting. I don't know if they're actually gray or not, but they're covered in green shit, and it turns into a splatterfest gore movie with all sorts of wild special effects, almost like, you know, some of the VHS shorts that have been coming out lately, when they become crazy and violent, although better than that. But yeah, it just gets really weird and to the point of insanity. The acting is really good because there's two people doing the whole thing, and I've never seen Matt Mercer be better. Not that he's a bad actor, but I've seen him pop up in a lot of indie movies, but I think this time he got to do something a little different, get to be a little bit more intense, got to have more focus on him. So I think that their chemistry is good. I like the, you know, cinematography, the point of view stuff, the wild special effects. It's just a very innovative, fun, awesome movie. I would highly recommend checking out Jimmy and Stiggs. As far as the special features are concerned, we have trailers for Piano Killer and Don't Go in the House, and Bitch, directed by Eli Roth, on the Blu-ray only. This is 4K and Blu-ray. Audio commentary, director, writer, producer, actor Joe Begos, and we have a commentary with the director, cinematographer, FX crew, and then a commentary with the casting crew, and then Working Class Horror, the crazy fucking making of Jimmy and Stiggs, 2.5 hour fly-on-the-wall doc about Jimmy and Stiggs, Splat Chat, a conversation with Joss Ethier and Matt Mercer, Kodak, motion picture film promo, Jimmy and Stiggs theatrical trailer. So 79 minutes of pure bloody chaos. Highly recommended for your 2025 horror viewing. Gotta see it. Good stuff. And alien horror, man. There's not too much of it. Inspired by the alien abduction video, the alien autopsy video, but great stuff. Okay, now in those 1983 movies, the first up is Play Dead. One of many killer dog movies this year, or at least a few. So I'm watching Play. This is a Beginner Syndrome release here. I've never seen this one. I'm watching this, and I'm like, boy, man, this feels a lot like a TV movie. And then I see some nudity, and I'm like, I guess not. I guess it's not a TV movie. But Yvonne DiCarlo is the biggest name in this one, of course. And she plays kind of this old, mean woman. And her sister recently just died, and she actually was madly in love with her sister's husband, so there was something going on there. And now the kids of that couple are coming into her life and everything like that. She seems rich and whatnot, and she wants to kind of get this revenge. I'm not sure what her fucking plan is, but she has this Rottweiler named Greta. Great cute dog, and super well trained, and she puts this weird kind of like satanic symbol or something on this dog, pentangle or something like that. I don't fucking know what it is. Puts it on this dog and gives it to, her niece. And this dog kind of starts to like pick people off. First it kills her brother, then it starts going after her boyfriend. Then, this cop starts to get involved in this really weird kind of detective pair. This old cop is kind of silly, and he has a lot of screen time, and he has a lot of these moments trying to figure out the crime, and he actually becomes kind of like the most likable, interesting character in the movie besides like the lead. There's scenes like her with Yvonne DiCarlo and the cop and stuff like that. Yvonne DiCarlo's fine in it, but she has some funny kind of semi-catty lines. But I never really understood her full motivation. Maybe I missed something, but obviously she was mad at her sister for taking her man, but it's all silly nonsense and whatnot. So it's kind of like a satanic dog attacks movie, kind of in the vein of like where we had the two Killer Hand movies from 81, because I'm talking about another dog movie after this, but we had the Killer Hand movies. One's like psychological and one's satanic, with the Killer Hand movies. Yeah, Demonoid's the satanic one, and then we have the psychological one in the hand. Now this one we have the satanic dog killer movie, and then we have the not psychological, but like classic one. So there's different kind of types of it. But yeah, this one overall, it's not too much to talk about. I thought it was fairly well shot for a cheap, low budget movie. It felt like a TV movie. And there's a sex scene in here, which they use, I think, doubles for the lead female, and it focuses on the guy's like package and like ass in the underwear for way longer than expected. I was like, man, like, you ever watch a movie and you're watching it and you're like, oh, I think this director's gay. Nah, it's like sometimes you just get that vibe, and I was like, I think this director is gay, because like it focused on the nudity a lot longer, like the sensual on the male guy, and it's like very rarely do they pull down that far in like the early 80s. But the sex scene is probably the most interesting thing in the movie, really. The dog is cute and the ending is silly. The death scenes aren't overly explicit. There's not really that many special effects. It gets dumb at points where you're like, well, he must have been strangled by a hand. It's like, how the fuck did that happen? That makes no sense. I don't want to spoil it, but it makes no fucking sense. But overall, it's just okay. Play Dead is just okay. It doesn't look too bad, though, on Blu-ray. It looks solid. There's some special features. Video interview with director Peter Whitman. Not too long. He didn't do that many movies. And audio interview with actress Stephanie Dunham, who I enjoyed hearing her talk about it. She did a few movies, and she's still working today. So there we go. Play Dead from 1983. Mediocre, but fine watch for me, entertaining enough. Okay, this one here is the other killer dog movie I'm going to talk about. No, it's not Cujo. Get out of here with that. This is Dogs of Hell, a.k.a. Rottweiler. Is this one a.k.a. Rottweiler? And this is directed by Worth Keeter, who, he did some other films as well, directed a bunch. And this is produced by Earl Owensby, who ran a company out of North Carolina. This was shot in the same place that Death Screams was shot in, the 1982 regional kind of horror film. And, this has the same, like, production crew behind A Day of Judgment, and even has some of the same people in it, like Helene Theron is in this one, who's in Death Screams, and is also in A Day of Judgment. So it's got a lot of that small kind of regional town flavor in here. Worth Keeter actually, I think, did the special effects on Death Screams as well. So it's got that little Earl Owensby kind of stuff here, and there's another couple, maybe one from 84 too, that I'm going to talk about that he produced as a horror film later on down the line. But Dogs of Hell, I think I enjoyed this one a little bit more than Play Dead. It's your standard, kind of killer animal movies from the 70s or 50s. So what we have here is, of course, you got your group of kind of people doing an experiment, right? And this truck is driving through the town and it crashes. They don't really show the dogs get out, but you have to assume it crashes and it attacks this kind of model shoot. All the deaths are off screen, but the aftermath's pretty nasty. All these beautiful girls get eaten by these killer crazy dogs that have been in this experiment. Of course, there's kind of a lone kind of crazy guy looking for them. It's a piranha. Remember Piranha? Yep. It's a lot like that. So we have this kind of crazy guy looking for them, and his reveal is super bizarre. He shows up and he's like, well, I sent all the people looking for the dogs the wrong way. I wanted the government. And he's like, why? He's like, I had to see this thing through. And he's like, I don't understand your fucking motivation, because you're trying to stop it. You told the government you wanted to stop this, but now all of a sudden you're sending them the wrong way to see it all the way through. Kind of goes mad scientist on it, but he kind of interacts with, of course, the sheriff and whatnot to try to stop these killer dogs. People are going to be picked off here and there, of course, left and right and whatnot. A lot of popular characters throughout the movie are going to die, and off screen, unfortunately, we have the guy who the actor, I cannot think of his name, but he pops up in a few of these kind of cheap low budget horror films. I think he was the main inspiration for the Dukes of Hazzard, if I'm not correctly. He pops up in the Final Exam at the end. He's the coach. He's in here too as a kind of a badass hunter that blows off one of the dogs' heads. There's a couple of good gnarly effects of dogs getting their fucking heads blown off. Damn evil Rottweilers. Same dog too, right? It's fucking Rottweilers in the 80s, man. Even as a kid growing up, Rottweilers were always something that was a bit kind of scary as one of those dogs that was pretty intimidating. But overall, I think that Dogs of Hell is a decent kind of killer animal movie, very standard in that sense, science kind of experiment gone wrong, more standard killer animal movies, maybe a bit too late. It would have fit better in the 70s. I think there was one Dogs from 76 that I've seen years ago, and then we'd get to one in the 90s like Man Bites Dog, which is more of the experimental kind of type hybrid scientific dog run amok. It's not perfect, but the end is pretty big with the big fire and everything like that. And overall, I've kind of enjoyed Dogs of Hell. This all VHS here is a media release with the bottom flap and everything like that. I cannot remember when I bought this damn thing, but it's been a while here. The U.S. Army trained them to be the perfect killing machine, swift, fearless, and savagely lethal. But they're unknowingly created mindless monsters. They had spawned the Dogs of Hell. An idyllic resort community has been ravaged by an unimaginable terror. Horribly mangled bodies are littering the countryside. The ensuing gruesome investigation leads a puzzled sheriff to the local university and to a fantastic, terrible secret. It seems the killers are a renegade horde of Rottweilers, a 3,500-year-old breed of dog. That's something you learn something new every day. Now the miscreant product of covert army experiments at the university. Ruthlessly trained in warfare tactics, they have escaped to fulfill their hellish conditioning to kill humans, so the sheriff must track them down, but he needn't waste his time. They are already hunting for him. Holy shit! But yeah, you get it. This tape was released in '85 for media. Nice sun faded there, as it should be. Probably sat in a family video or a mom and pop shop for years. But yeah, that's Dogs of Hell. The next one from '83 is Geek, Maggot, Bingo. The other alternate name, which is the full name, is completely even weird, like Suckweasel, whatever the hell. This was directed by Nick Zed, who was known as like a transgressive, kind of wild, weird kind of filmmaker from New York City. And I don't know if I've ever seen a Nick Zed movie. This might be the first one. I don't want to say he's in like the same camp as like a Richard Kern, because those are like more sexual and wild and weird. But maybe Nick Zed ends up being like a Richard Kern. I enjoy his movies. So Nick Zed, weird movie here. I know he just recently passed away, if I'm not mistaken. But this is so weird. So I put this one in, and I'm going to be honest. At first I was like, this is a hunk of shit. This is amateurish crap. It's so silly. It's so weird. It's just not good in a weird way. And as it progressed, I knew what it was trying to go for. At least I thought. But it finally won me over, and I was like, I kind of get this now, and I really enjoyed it, more so than I actually thought. And it's definitely like a throwback, like parody, satire kind of style thing to the classic horror movies, right? We have a mad scientist here who's creating this monster. And I don't necessarily know the wild details here, but his young son has ended up getting involved with this kind of like this professor's daughter, but a vampire starts targeting them, so that adds adds this whole complicated issue. At the same time, this mad scientist is trying to create this kind of monster, and he has a hunchback kind of helper, and they end up trying to bring their monster to life by bringing in this like cowboy who's basically, I think, might be Billy the Kid, and they're playing cards with him, and they're trying to use his like life force to bring this creature to life. At the same time, a Dracula kind of creature is over here, like I said. So it gets really weird, really bizarre. There's kind of monster mash kind of storyline here. The acting is pretty goofy and over the top and incredibly amateurish, but at the same time, I wouldn't even call them matte paintings for the most part. That sometimes the whole movie will turn into a painting and it'll be very poorly animated, or the background is just painted on walls to set this whole thing, and it's just, you're like, this is just like a weird, like almost like play. Some of the acting is, like I said, okay, but most part it's just purposely or like just terribly done in the silliest kind of way. But by the end of the movie, when the monster is actually brought to life to stop the vampire, and his design is so weird that he has like this second head on him, I kind of fell in love with it. The special effects get better, it gets gorier, it gets weirder, and when you have something so silly and lighthearted and amateurish as this that shows full frontal male nudity, I was like, this is something different. This is that transgressive stuff I guess they were talking about, where it's pushing that envelope, where you're like, you got this silly kind of thing like you'd expect, like a Billy the Kid versus Dracula or some shit, which is a title that I've had numerous times that I've ever watched, but I was thinking that obviously Monster Mash kind of style goofiness, 50s love letter stuff, and then it becomes this like weird transgressive thing all at the same time. But overall, I enjoyed it. Sexually weird parody kind of nonsense movie with some hokey, silly acting. Yeah, Nick Zed, weird movie. Geek, Maggot, Bingo. The title alone should kind of tell you what you're kind of going to get here. So yeah, check it out if it sounds like it's up your alley. Okay, this next one here is from 1987. This is a Philippines movie by Teddy Page. I can't remember exactly his name. I've seen it listed as different stuff. And this is Phantom Soldiers. And this is the first movie I think I've seen by him. He did Blood Feud as well, which is another one that I definitely want to check out after watching Phantom Soldiers. Yeah, everybody knows that the Filipino movies were pretty crazy, especially the Italians who make movies there. And after Apocalypse Now, a lot of people would make the movies there and everything like that. And they seem to be unsafe as fuck. And this is exactly what Phantom Soldiers feels like. Nomploitation at its finest. Kind of like Uncommon Valor made in the Philippines with absolutely ridiculous, I'd say ADR for sure, and just kind of nonstop action at the same time. So we have here in the very opening, we have these Phantom Soldiers, these guys in gas masks, black suits, going through this kind of Vietnamese town, village, and just slaughtering everyone. And I was like, how are they going to keep up this pace? Newsflash, they don't. But that opening is completely brutal, almost from something that is just so much darker and nastier than the rest of this film. But these about 40 guys go through this village, and maybe 20, and they just mow down everybody, blow up every single house and everything, shoot people in the back, and then the last people that are alive, they decide to set them on, throw about this poison gas and let them all die on the beach. It is brutal, man. It is just kind of next level kind of insanity, and I was like, are we going to see something, on the level of Cannibal Mercenary from 1983, or something a little bit more dark? But as it progresses, it kind of gets a little bit more, silly and slows down a little bit, becomes something more like Dog Tags, the Nomploitation movie by the director of, Nightmares in a Damaged Brain, or maybe the Italian style ones, and a little bit like Filipino action movies. Not as goofy as something like, the Italian Filipino movie like Strike Commando or something like that, but kind of on that level. Like I said, if you wanted to see, the Philippines remake Uncommon Valor or Let's Get Hairy, then this is the kind of movie I guess you'd see here. But so what happens is, we have this, I think he's a colonel, and we have this special kind of force that runs into the Phantom Soldiers, and they don't really know who they are, and they get killed. Some of them get killed, some of them get kidnapped, and the colonel's brother's missing, so he decides to look into it. He's kind of goes through the small villages, the areas and stuff, and runs into a bunch of guys, and he decides that he's going to figure out who these Phantom Soldiers are. And since the Phantom Soldiers are kind of disrupting the whole villages and killing everybody, this is kind of displacing everything and making it even crazier, so there's all these random attacks and violence and everything like that. So he kind of infiltrates and finds this group of weird kind of soldiers out in the middle of nowhere that appear to be Americans, but guess what? They're not. They're Ruskies. Spoiler. Yeah, Ruskies, and all sorts of, and there's this stupid reveal that is absolutely fucking hilarious. I won't spoil that part for you. I kind of want to, but I won't. But anyways, he finds his brother, and it's for them to fight back and escape. For a movie that starts off so brutal, it does get silly, but it never stops being fun. It's vastly entertaining. Phantom Soldiers I'd like to see a nice release of this one. Fun movie, kind of, makes me want to dive into some more of these Filipino kind of action style films here. I think I've seen the director listed as Teddy Page, but that's not his actual real name. It's probably his more Americanized name. And he did a slew of these kind of crazy, wild movies, but I'd recommend this one. The acting, there's a lot of the actors are familiar to me, but I wouldn't know their names. They're kind of just like, I think I recognize that guy a little bit here and there. Oh, Jim Gaines is in here. I do recognize Jim Gaines, who is in another kind of Filipino shot horror film. And after, I believe Zombie Before After Death is shot there too by Claudio Fragasso. He plays, the soldier who blows himself up with a grenade. And you know what? He kind of has a similar end in this one as well. But yeah, plenty of explosions, plenty of unsafe, kind of action and everything like that. Check out Phantom Soldiers. Listed as a horror film, and that opening certainly seems like it, but I'd say more of an action kind of thriller. Just action, war, kind of action, war, and then maybe tinges of horror, I guess. But entertaining, fun movie. Phantom Soldiers, check it out. All right, let's get into those questions, comments, and concerns. We have William, what is that? William Orlock. Mrparka is a fantastic book. Kummel's adaptation is pretty damn decent, though. John Ray's apocalyptic ending could be pulled off with today's FX. I wonder how film history. Oh, what is that supposed to be? Oh, science fiction film history would have gone if Peter Hyams did Alien and Cameron did 2010. I'm not sure. That is interesting to think, though, if Peter Hyams did Alien. I think that he could get the vibe, but man, I don't even want to fucking touch Alien, because I love Alien. What the flick? I moved to Texas 3 years ago, and now I go to Texas Frightmare every year since I've been there. It's awesome, aside from how goddamn packed it is. The past year, Bruce Campbell was there. Doors open at 11. I was in line at 11, but didn't get my ticket due to the line till about 12:30, and that's just a line for pre-order tickets. But at that point, tickets to see Bruce Campbell were sold out. The same thing happened the year before with John Carpenter. They did an episode of The Last Fan Standing after the convention. It was a great experience. I placed 63 out of 786. I can't wait in line like that, guys. I just can't. I met Romero, and it's the longest I ever waited, maybe an hour or so, but it was worth it because Romero's my guy. Beyond Sour's Ground, Mrparka, I posted my comment before hearing the Q&A part. I just thought I'd take a second to mention the promoters of the Living Dead Weekend said the mall is scheduled for demolition sometime in 2027, so they intend to do at least a few more shows before that date. I've never been to the Moreauville Mall, so I'm making plans to attend next year. And with Cinema Wasteland dropping down to once a year, I'm so disappointed, but once a year Wasteland is better than no Wasteland at all. Yeah, for sure. And I don't know if Wasteland's going to continue after the next few years or not, and it's just a different time, and it sucks about the mall, but I'm surprised the mall's been standing this long, to be honest. I guess the number one thing you can do is never shop at Walmart, which I don't do anyways, because fuck Walmart. I just don't like the store. It's a shitty store. I'm better to give my business to other people like Costco or even Kroger's or Meijer or some other place, but just not a big fan of Walmart, so I don't shop there. And if you want to really fucking hurt them in the wallet. It's no way you can hurt anyone. Anyways, nowadays. Amy D. Watched Outland recently. Glad to hear you discuss it. I heard someone say it could be the same universe as Alien. I could see that. I agree. It does feel kind of like Alien and Blue Collar, which Alien already feels like Blue Collar. But that's just another one kind of dealing. Blue Collar is not a science fiction movie, of course. Beyond Sour's Ground also says something. Hey, Mr. Parker, you're going to edit an intro for 83. I listen to the film soundtracks a lot while running. I listen to film soundtracks a lot while exercising, running errands, etc. And the other day I was listening to the Creepshow theme, and I caught myself reciting, "You only move the headstones, you only move the headstones." So you're clearly implanting earworms on my brain. Very funny. Yes, I'm actually posting the 1983 tomorrow for Halloween. I'm in the camp of people that really like the original Boogeyman, even though I agree the film is largely nonsensical. I wish someone would release Boogeyman 2 on Blu-ray. As of right now, there are only 3 of the original 72 video nasties that are largely lost on physical media. Boogeyman 2, Don't Go Near the Park, and Unhinged. Unhinged is genuine lost film, but I don't know what's up with Boogeyman 2 and Don't Go Near the Park. I remember Don't Go Near the Park was supposed to be released by Severn at one point. There is a DVD from Dark Sky that I have, and Unhinged, just the elements are lost. I have a Code Red DVD and a Brinkwood DVD. Unhinged is an underrated movie. I think that if it was cleaned up, it would get some love. I think it deserves some. On the topic of Night of the Living Dead 90 and Romero, I'm curious what your thoughts are on Land, Diary, and Survival of the Dead. I actually picked up the DVD of Diary of the Dead at Wasteland because I realized it was the only Romero movie I didn't own on any format. Man, I've covered Land on here. I like Land. Diary, I liked when it came out. I had issues with it, and Survival I have issues with as well. I definitely would have to revisit them, but maybe down the line I will. Romero's my guy, so I don't know. I'm sure I'll find something that I enjoy in them. I still would. I know I would, but I don't think that they're just not up to snuff with the original 3 or even the 4th film in the series. Speaking of Wasteland, I meant to come up and say hi since I think it's been years since you and I last talked, and we're only ever talked in passing. If you're anything like me, it's actually hard to move around and do a lot at Wasteland because there's always so much to do and so many people to talk to. I don't know if you were there for the entire weekend. I noticed you walked by the lobby with a group of people on Saturday night, but I was also with a group of people, and it just didn't seem like a convenient time to stop and talk. I'll try and make a point to say hello in April. If you see me, feel free to do the same, although placing a face with a name might be a mystery since I've used different usernames over the years. I'm not currently making videos, and I believe it or not, I'm not actually Michael from Burial Ground. You're not Michael from Burial... Fuck. Get off the page. I want to talk to Mike. No, but yeah, it's so hard because people never use their real names or faces, or you'll be like, they change everything like that. But just say hi if you want. Yeah, I'm sure. And I guarantee if you say hi and mention you, I'm like, oh yes, and I'll remember you from before and all that kind of stuff like that. But it's hard to put the names to the face. You know, so many people comment on here. Not so many, but a lot of people comment. They comment under different names. But yeah, way up, dude. Gives me a thumbs up. Thank you. Espinito here. There we go. This is 81 Oak Ridge. Dave, what's up, man? I deleted my Facebook a few months ago, so I had to comment and ask your thoughts on these 4Ks being released in theatrical R-rated versions, especially the Devil's Rejects. I don't support censored art. I don't care how good it looks. Yeah, if it's theatrical, I haven't even done any research on it. I haven't picked it up. I don't want the theatrical. I won't buy it. I love the movie, but I won't buy it. Necrops, gun to your head. If you had to pick a best year for horror, what would you pick? I got two. Gun to the head. I'm going to risk the bullet getting pulled. 85 and 80. 85 has two of my all-time favorite 3 horror films in it, and then a bunch of other ones I absolutely love. And 80 has a bunch. 80 is just such a strong year for me. And he says, whenever I make pasta, I add plenty of red dew. Of course, he's talking about Subspecies 4. Just don't add any garlic, okay? And best channel on YouTube. Thank you, buddy. Nick from Flanders. So happy that both Mrparka and Daughters of Darkness have gotten such excellent releases. Harry Kumel is too, especially because of the revenue still coming his way. I'm overjoyed that at least a small slice of Belgium art will live on. Indeed. While I have seen Mr. Lamel's Boogeyman, I have to say his whole name, or I couldn't pronounce it, Lamel's Boogeyman a few times and kind of liked it. I haven't had the courage to check out the sequels. From what you're telling us, I'm not missing much. Just make sure you watch the original version of the Boogeyman too. I think there's a different recut version. I'm going to check out both Sinners and Companion. You liked both, right? Yes, I enjoyed them. Questions. When did you see Daughters of Darkness for the first time? Did you immediately like it, or is it an acquired taste? Years ago. Many, many years ago. Probably on DVD. Maybe even VHS. I do not remember. It was one of those ones that had like this super well-respected like look to it. So like I watched it, and I don't know if I loved it. I didn't hate it, but I remember just kind of walking away like, oh, that looked really cool and it was memorable. But I don't know really how to feel about it. I was probably in my early teens, so something like that. Just probably, you know, you're watching it because you hear it's like a lesbian vampire movie, and I didn't really see a lot of those until I got a little bit older, you know, and stuff like that. I had a lot of them, but I just didn't watch them until probably my later than I should have. But I think Daughters of Darkness is probably one of the first ones like that I really did enjoy, and over the years it's become one of the better ones, and I always like it. It's just a brilliantly well shot movie, well acted movie, gorgeous score. So it's a classic. I don't remember how I felt about it when I originally saw it. I most certainly didn't hate it. It's probably like Jose Larra's Vampires. You know, I remember liking that, but I don't remember being blown away about it. But those two movies always get better with age. Although Daughters of Darkness is a vastly superior movie made on technical level, I'd say, just in terms of budget and everything. Two, I own older editions of Ruby and The Man Who Could Cheat Death, both excellent films. Well, the ending of Ruby is a bit rough, but hey, are they worth upgrading? Double dip. Well, I haven't watched them yet on my 4Ks. I barely remember Ruby. And The Man Who Could Cheat Death I remember really liking. And Antron Driftin in that one. It's kind of like a Dorian Gray style story, if I remember correctly. And Dr. Jekyll's story from Hammer. Do you find Graveyard creepy or consoling, somewhere in between? Till next time, God willing. Happy Samhain to you, Jeremy and the Cats. I don't find graveyards particularly creepy. I find them atmospheric. I don't run in graveyards at night. I might be scared then. I don't think I do that, but, you know, I think that they can be creepy. I don't find them comforting or consoling or anything of that nature. So I don't really know how to answer that, but that's the best I can. Ken Coakley, I don't have any movies to talk about this week, but as I write this, is October 30th, Hell Night to most, Cabbage Night to us in Massachusetts, Mass Holes. Halloween is the one holiday my calendar year revolves around. I haven't had much to celebrate the past few years because of this place, so I think of the past Halloween. So I have some Halloween questions. What was your favorite costume? Oh man, I don't want to go into all of them because I was one of those guys in my teens that just wore offensive costumes. Like, and I'm not going to go into those, but you know, just crazy ass things like that. But as a kid, I would always be something scary. I dressed up as zombies numerous fucking times. But I was a Crypt Keeper once. I loved wearing that little mask, the Crypt Keeper mask. I was the creature from the Black Lagoon once. Remember doing that. I love those characters. Geez, zombies, zombie masks, Corn Man. Dressed up as the Corn Man, which is a classic character that me and my cousin made up that we always wrote stories about. But I mean, I'll just say one of them. I was Jesus because I used to have the long hair. I was Jesus one year, and I was the crucified Jesus one year as well, post death, before and after crucifixion. But I was in my early 20s for those. But they were good costumes because I looked a lot like the guy at the time. There's probably pictures on my Facebook somewhere. What was your favorite candy that you got trick or treating back then? I don't remember. But now my favorite candy would be completely different. It wouldn't be the same thing. But I liked like the gummy, like Starburst and Skittles and stuff as a kid, and like Reese's and stuff. But now as an adult, I'd be like, man, I don't know, just give me like the Snickers and stuff like that. But I'm the guy that doesn't want to buy Halloween candy. I mean, I'll buy it to pass out, but I don't like to buy candy to sit around the house because I'll just eat it. But I don't love candy, but if it's sitting there, I'll eat it. If that makes any sense. Like, they brought in some for work, and I'm walking by that, like, the little Halloween candy, and I'm like, I gotta eat something. But, it's just, if it's in front of me, I'm like a dog, I'll eat it. Do you have a favorite memory from a past Halloween that made it special? I do remember one time I came back and I was like 13 years old, and I watched Let Sleepy Corpses live for the first time, but I fell asleep because I was so exhausted. But I think I was dressed as a prostitute that year. See, like I said, I was dressed as a female prostitute that year when I was in 13 or something like that. So I always did wild shit like that. When I was real young, I was always monsters, and then I got to a certain point I would just be like crazy, silly shit. And do you have any go-to movies that you watch on Halloween night? You know what? I surprisingly don't, but I do. I'll pop in something like Night of the Living Dead or Night of the Demons or Flesh Eater or Midnight Hour. Just something that has that Halloween spirit to it that I really like. But yeah, I have been watching the same 3 movies every year since Halloween '83, Night of the Living Dead, Phantasm, Rocky Horror Picture Show. Great choices, honestly. Love all those movies. But Night of the Living Dead is one I think for perfect Halloween kind of feel. My best memory from a past Halloween is coming home from school, and when I walked in, my mother decorated the place and got me the Bachman Books trade paperbacks. 2 days ago would have been her 90th birthday. R.I.P. Mom. Yeah, I'm sorry about your mom. Yeah, I often kind of tie in memories of nostalgia with my mother because she'd take me to video stores. She'd always be there, helping me get dressed for Halloween. My dad was more the guy with the costumes. He was better with that kind of stuff. But, my mom would take me trick-or-treating, or my dad always took me trick-or-treating too. My dad was always the guy who did that. But my mom would help me decorate the house. I remember doing that right when it turned a certain point. After my birthday, September 27th, I was like, now can I decorate the house? And I'd run around and put all the paintings up, and I was so excited. Those are some of my favorite memories, actually, of Halloween, is decorating and stuff like that. Just being so excited, so full of anticipation to go trick-or-treating, and being so excited for the holiday and everything like that. All the cares in the world were gone. You didn't have any. All your only care was to make sure that you get trick-or-treating candy. And I loved the monsters. I used to run around the house and shoot at all the decorations. Like, I had a fake gun and stuff. Like, I was shooting monsters and everything like that. I used to have nightmares as a kid that I woke up at 7 o'clock and I ran out in the street at night, and everybody was already, I missed Halloween, all that kind of stuff like that. But let's get to this update. You know what? Let's get to this update. Let's just do it right here. It's not that many movies, but first up, Stepfather on 4K. Yes, I had to open it because the Blu-ray was rattling in there. It's got both in there. But classic 87 horror film starring Carrie O'Quinn, psychological stuff. Been a long time since I watched it. Upgraded onto 4K. Good stuff. And this one I did upgrade. And this cover looks a little weird to me, like Scream Factory printed it off kind of cheaply. But this is Night of the Creeps on 4K. Now, I originally was not going to buy this of this one because the theatrical cut is not on 4K, and I was like, I prefer the theatrical cut because I like the ending better. But it's not the end of the world, and I love the movie, so I basically picked this one up here. So yeah, they do not even have the original ending on here, do they? I don't think they do. I think you'll have to probably... The original theatrical ending is on the Blu-ray here. But anyways, I don't know why they do seamless branching. I do keep your Blu-rays, though, so you can have the theatrical version. Night of the Creeps is one of my all-time favorites. Fred Decker here. And then we got, my Satô set came in from the Vinegar Syndrome Pink label. Films of Hisayasu Satô. Great Japanese Pinky director. I don't even call him Pinky or whatever you'd call him. But his films are often very, technologically based and kind of erotic. But this has Rewind, aka Celluloid Tears, Lustmord, and Love Letter in the Sand on here. 3 of his movies. I know Volume 2 is coming. I'm super excited to see what's in there. I want to dive into that. Maybe I'll dive into that box set next. And then I did the April Fool's thing. I got my little Frisbee from Vinegar Syndrome here. And the special films were Babe Watch, Forbidden Parody, and Good Girls Don't. Yeah, that's right. And these are Rick Sloane movies who did Hobgoblins. So, yeah, that is my update. Let's get out of here. All right, guys, thank you very much for watching. And as always, have a good one.